Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading into the Cave of Altamira in Cantabria, Spain. It's often called the Sistine Chapel of Paleolithic art, but honestly, it's so much more.
It really is. It's like a direct window into the creative minds of our very early ancestors. We've dug into a lot of sources to really get under the skin of its significance.
Yeah, and our mission here is to pull out the key insights. We're talking its discovery, which is a story in itself, the whole struggle for its authenticity.
The amazing art, of course, how we've managed to date it, what it might all mean, the huge challenges in preserving it.
Right, and where it fits in the bigger picture of Paleolithic art.
We want you to come away understanding how this one cave basically flipped our whole understanding of prehistoric humans on its head and why it still captures our imagination today.
Exactly. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So the story starts, interestingly enough, quite by accident.
It does. Back in 1868, a local guy, Modesto Cabillas, was out looking for his dog near Santillana del Mar.
As you do.
Right. And while searching, he stumbles across this cave entrance. Now, Cantabria is packed with caves, so finding another one wasn't, earth-shattering news at first.
No immediate headlines. It just shows, doesn't it? An ordinary day looking for a dog leads to something that completely rewrites history.
Totally. The real significance didn't click until Marcelino Sanz de Sartuola got involved. He was a local landowner, an amateur paleontologist, really into natural history.
He heard about the cave and decided to check it out. This was around 1875, 1876. On those first visits, he did spot some abstract marks, some black lines, but he didn't initially think they were human-made, just natural markings maybe, so he didn't focus on them. It's funny how sometimes you can look right at something incredible and not see it if it doesn't fit what you expect.
It's almost unbelievable looking back that someone so knowledgeable could initially overlook the main event, but it shows how hard it is to recognize something truly revolutionary.
Definitely. The real breakthrough moment, the one everyone remembers, came in the summer of 1879. Sartuola went back to the cave.
And this time, he brought his daughter, Maria. She was 8 years old.
And that made all the difference. While her father was busy digging near the entrance, looking for tools and bones, Maria, being a kid, wandered off into a side chamber.
Lower ceiling in there, right?
Yeah, low ceiling. She looked up and, well, she became the first modern human to see those incredible paintings.
That famous line, "Papa, mira, toros pintados." Papa, look, painted bulls. Gives you chills, doesn't it?
It really does. And Sartuola, to his credit, immediately understood. He saw what Maria saw, and the penny dropped. Big time.
A child's perspective, cutting through everything. Amazing.
Absolutely. He documented everything meticulously, the paintings, the artifacts. And just a year later, in 1880, he published his findings. A short paper, Breves apuntes sobre algunos objetos prehistóricos de la provincia de Santander.
And he didn't hold back. He made the huge leap attributing these paintings to Paleolithic people.
Which was incredibly bold for the time. It flew in the face of prevailing ideas about early humans being, well, primitive.
And he wasn't just about the science, was he? He worried about protecting it.
Right away. He personally paid to put a wooden door on the entrance. And luckily, the local town council in Santillana del Mar also saw its importance pretty quickly. They replaced his wooden door with a proper iron gate that same year, 1880.
That's actually quite forward-thinking for the time.
It really was. The whole discovery story has got everything chance, a child's fresh eyes, Sartuola's insight, and his proactive approach to protection. Really remarkable.
But as you hinted, his conclusions didn't exactly get a standing ovation from the scientific world.
Oh, far from it. That's putting it mildly. Instead of excitement, his publication kicked off this huge wave of disbelief, even hostility, especially from the big names in French prehistory circles.
Okay, why? What was the resistance about? It seems incredible now.
Well, there were a few key reasons. First, you have to understand the 19th century mindset. The dominant view was that primitive humans were just incapable of this level of artistic skill and sophistication. The Altamira paintings were too good.
Too advanced for their supposed stage of evolution.
Precisely. Second, there wasn't really anything else like it known at the time. No comparable Paleolithic art of that quality had been found. So Altamira looked like this bizarre anomaly, made people suspicious.
Okay, lack of context. That makes sense.
Which leads to the third point, accusations of forgery. Some people genuinely thought it was fake, maybe even recently. Gabriel de Mortier, a very influential French prehistorian, floated this wild idea about a Jesuit conspiracy trying to discredit evolution.
Wow. Seriously.
Seriously. And you probably also had a bit of let's say, nationalistic bias or academic rivalry playing a role. Some French researchers maybe weren't thrilled about such a huge discovery happening in Spain.
So who were the main figures pushing back against Santillana?
Émile Cartehec and Gabriel de Mortier in France were definitely the most prominent critics. But even within Spain, respected groups like the Institución Libre de Enseñanza expressed public doubt. The skepticism was really widespread.
And this all came to a head at a big conference.
Yeah, the International Congress of Anthropology and Prehistoric Archaeology in Lisbon, 1880. A Spanish geologist, Juan Vilanova y Piera, really went to bat for Altamira. He presented Santillana's findings, even invited everyone to come see the cave.
How did that go down?
Not well. The Congress remained skeptical. Instead of taking him up on the offer, they decided to send their own expert, a French engineer named Edouard Harlet, to investigate.
Uh-oh. I have a feeling this doesn't end well for Santillana in the short term.
You'd be right. Harlet visited twice, and his report in 1881 was absolutely damning. He declared the paintings were modern forgeries, done sometime between 1875 and 1879. He claimed the thin calcite layers over some paintings weren't proof of great age.
Ouch. And that report carried a lot of weight.
Huge weight. Cartehec even published it in his influential journal. It basically cemented the rejection of Altamira for years.
That must have been crushing for Santillana after finding something so incredible.
Totally devastating. And sadly, Marcelino Sanz de Santillana died in 1888. He never saw his discovery get the recognition it deserved in his lifetime.
But the tide did eventually turn, right? What changed people's minds?
Yes, thankfully. Towards the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century, more discoveries started popping up. Caves in southern France, La Mothe, Fontagaume, Les Combarelles.
And they had similar art.
Exactly. Paintings and engravings with striking similarities to Altamira in style, technique, context. Suddenly, Altamira didn't look like such an anomaly anymore. The forgery explanation started to look pretty shaky.
So comparative evidence was the key, finding more pieces of the puzzle.
That was crucial. But the real turning point, the moment that sealed the deal, came from a very unexpected place.
Oh.
Remember Émile Cartehec, one of the biggest skeptics?
Yeah.
Well, in 1902, faced with all this new evidence from France, he did something quite remarkable. He published an article in the journal Anthropology titled, basically, The Decorated Caves, the Altamira Cave, Spain, a skeptic's confession, a mea culpa.
Wow. He publicly admitted he was wrong.
He did. Full public retraction. Coming from someone of his stature, that was massive. It effectively ended the controversy. Altamira was finally universally accepted.
That takes some serious intellectual honesty.
It really does. And Cartehec's admission wasn't just about Altamira. It helped legitimize the entire field of Paleolithic art studies. It showed that science could correct itself, even when established figures had been mistaken.
What an incredible saga. Discovery, rejection, eventual vindication. It really shows how science works, sometimes slowly and painfully.
Absolutely. And once the authenticity was settled, people could finally just marvel at the art itself. And the Sistine Chapel comparison, it's not hyperbole, is it?
Not at all. The artistry in Altamira is just staggering. It really is a high point of human creative history. You've got these amazing polychrome paintings, delicate engravings, black outlines. Suggests a long period of use.
And the absolute centerpiece has to be the great ceiling, the Gran Techo de los Policromos.
Tell us about that. What makes it the masterpiece?
Well, it's this natural limestone ceiling, sort of irregular, ochre-colored, with all these bumps and bulges and cracks. And the artist didn't just paint on it. They painted with it. They used those natural contours brilliantly.
To give the animal shape.
Exactly. Especially the bison. They're the most famous figures up there, so many of them.
And different poses too, right?
Astonishing variety.
Yeah.
Lying down, standing, tensed up. And that famous reclining bison, the Bisonte encaído, is perfectly fitted under this big bulge in the rock. It makes it look almost three-dimensional, like sculpture. The detail is incredible. The fur, the hump, the muscles, you feel their presence.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Are there other animals besides bison?
Oh, yes. Horses are prominent, too. Though, interestingly, they often seem to be underneath the bison, suggesting maybe they're from an earlier phase. They look like those sturdy little ponies that were common in the region back then.
Uh-huh.
And then there are the deer, especially the hinds. There's one huge hind, over 2 meters long, practically life-size. It's this gorgeous mix of red ochre, black charcoal lines, fine engravings, and they cleverly used a curve in the rock to make her look pregnant.
Incredible attention to detail.
There's another big hind, too, a bit less detailed. Some people think there might be a wild boar, but the identification isn't certain, could just be an unusual bison. But the skill in capturing the anatomy, the movement, it's just top-notch.
And the art isn't just on the main ceiling, right? It extends deeper into the cave.
That's right. There's a long, narrow passage called the Cola de Caballo, the horsetail gallery. It's got maybe 19 figures more: bison, deer heads, horses, other cow-like animals. Some are finished paintings, others just sketches or engravings.
Any abstract signs in there?
Yes, some tectiforms of sort of rectangular hut-like shapes.
Sure.
And fascinatingly, in this gallery, there's an engraving that seems to show a pair of bison mating.
Hinting at fertility themes, maybe.
Possibly. And that brings us to the abstract art more generally. It's not just animals. You find these ideomorphs, lines, dots, the tectiforms scattered around.
And you mentioned a really old one earlier.
Yes, that red claviform sign, club-shaped right in the middle of the polychrome ceiling. That's the one dated to around 35,600 years ago. Mind-bogglingly old.
Just incredible. So, a really long history of marking this place.
Decades of millennia. We also see human handprints, positive and negative stencils. That's a common motif in Paleolithic art, probably loaded with meaning. And there are a few schematic, human-like figures, anthropomorphs, both painted and engraved. It's this rich mix.
How did they actually do all this? What were their materials and techniques?
Well, their palette was limited but effective. Pigments came from local minerals. Reds from iron oxides like hematite, black from charcoal, probably pine wood or manganese oxide, yellows from other earthy ochres.
So mostly reds and blacks.
Primarily by photochrom, yeah. But the way the natural rock color interacts and how pigments have maybe faded or shifted slightly over time gives it this richer polychrome feel. And interestingly, it looks like they often apply the pigment directly, maybe just mixed with water, not pre-mixed on a separate palette.
Okay. And application. How did they get it on the walls and ceilings?
A whole range of methods. Fingers, definitely, for smearing and blending. They probably use crayons made from chunks of pigment or charred sticks. Maybe rudimentary brushes from plants or animal hair that's speculative, but possible. And then there's aerography blowing paint. They might have literally spat diluted pigment or used their hands as stencils. Some researchers think bone tubes found with ochre residue might have been early spray painting tools.
Like a prehistoric airbrush? Cool.
Kind of. For engravings, they used sharp flint tools, burins. And of course, they needed light. Simple lamps burning animal fat with a wick made of plant fibers would have lit the space, casting flickering shadows. Must have been incredibly atmospheric.
You really get a sense of the ingenuity involved. But you mentioned earlier the way they used the rock itself.
Yes, that's maybe the most remarkable technique. The masterful use of the cave's natural relief. They saw the 3D potential of the surface. Those bulges became bison bodies. Curves defined backs and bellies. Cracks were incorporated as outlines or anatomical details.
So the art in the cave are inseparable. It's almost sculpted into the rock.
Exactly. It gives it this amazing three-dimensional, almost living quality. And they combine techniques, beautifully engraving for sharp lines and details like eyes or manes, painting for color and mass. It suggests a clear process. Select the spot, maybe engrave the outline, add black for shading, then apply the color.
It just completely blows away any old ideas about primitive art. This is sophisticated stuff.
Absolutely. Deep observation of nature, understanding of form, perspective, deliberate aesthetic choices. Masterful.
And the fact that some figures are painted over others, what does that tell us?
The superpositions, yeah. Like bison over horses. That's strong evidence for different phases of activity. It suggests the cave wasn't just used once, but was revisited, redecorated over potentially thousands of years. It's like a sacred canvas that generations kept adding to.
A palimpsest. Layers of meaning over time.
Precisely. A dialogue across generations. And think about the effort involved finding pigments, making tools, the skill needed to paint like this, often in difficult-to-reach places.
It wasn't casual doodling.
No way. It points towards a significant investment of time and knowledge, maybe even specialized individuals, artists within the group who had these skills.
Okay, so we have these incredible artworks spanning potentially tens of thousands of years. How on earth do scientists figure out when each piece was made? Dating must be key.
It's absolutely crucial for understanding the context, the evolution of styles, how Altamira relates to other sites. It puts the art into the vast timeline of prehistory. And yes, dating it has involved some clever scientific techniques, primarily two main methods.
What are they?
First is carbon-14 dating, or C14. You probably know the basics. It works on organic materials.
Right, things that were once alive.
Exactly. Like the charcoal used in the black paintings, or bones and charcoal bits found in the layers where people lived, near the cave entrance. C14 measures the decay of this radioactive carbon isotope, giving us an age estimate. It's been vital for dating the Magdalenian period, when the main polychrome paintings with black charcoal were likely done, and the associated occupation levels.
But it has limitations, right? Can't date everything.
Correct. It can't directly date mineral pigments, the reds, the yellows, because they're not organic. And it can't date engravings unless there's some organic material trapped in them. So while C14 gives us key dates for parts of Altamira, particularly the Magdalenian black pigments, it doesn't cover everything.
Okay, so what's the other main method? How do they date the reds or the engravings?
That's where uranium-thorium series dating, UTV, comes in. This method works on mineral formations, specifically the thin layers of calcite like flowstone or stalactites that can form over or under the artwork over long periods.
Like layers of geological varnish.
Kind of. Calcite naturally contains traces of uranium, which decays into thorium at a known rate. By measuring the ratio of uranium to thorium isotopes in these calcite layers, scientists can figure out when the layer formed. If the calcite is over the paint, it gives a minimum age for the art. If it's under the paint, it gives a maximum age.
Clever. So it works even without organic material.
Exactly. It's been invaluable for dating things like the red paintings or pure engravings that C14 can't touch.
So putting C14, UT, and the archaeology of the living areas together, what timeline emerges for Altamira?
We get a really long and complex picture. The oldest confirmed human presence in the entrance area is from the final Gravescian, around 26,000 years ago. Then there's evidence for Solutrean occupation, maybe 24,000 to 20,500 years ago. Some of the red horse figures on the main ceiling might stylistically belong to this Solutrean period.
Okay.
Then comes the Magdalenian period. This is seen as the peak artistic phase, especially for the polychromes. The main Magdalenian occupation dates from around 19,000 to maybe 16,800 years ago. The C14 dates on the charcoal and the polychrome paintings, put them mostly in the middle Magdalenian, roughly around 15,500 years ago, give or take.
So that's the Sistine Chapel phase, the famous bison and deer.
Largely, yes. But then Euthyd dating through a curveball. Remember that red claviform sign?
The club shape. Yeah, you said it was really old.
Incredibly old. The Eudorge date on the calcite over that sign gave a minimum age of 35,600 years ago.
Whoa! That pushes things way back.
Right into the Aurignacian period, which is fascinating because, so far, clear Aurignacian living layers have been found in the entrance excavations. And what's more, other nearby caves, like El Castillo, have even older dates for things like red dots and hand stencils, potentially over 40,000 years old.
So art was being made in this region, and possibly in Altamira itself, much earlier than the main Magdalenian period.
Exactly. It implies Altamira wasn't just decorated in one burst of creativity. It was a significant place, visited and marked over at least 20,000 years, from the Aurignacian right through to the Magdalenian.
That's mind-blowing, the same space holding art from such vastly different times.
It speaks volumes about its enduring importance. Maybe later Magdalenian artists even saw and interacted with the much older Aurignacian signs. And the fact that we have Aurignacian art deep inside, but maybe not settlement at the entrance yet, could suggest different uses of the cave over time early on, maybe just for ritual or art. Later, more settlement too.
And these newer dating methods have really changed the game.
Completely. Euthyd dating especially has revolutionized our understanding of Paleolithic art chronology worldwide, showing it started earlier and was more complex than we thought. It highlights how crucial these scientific dating techniques are.
Okay, so they created this incredible art over millennia. But the big question remains, why? What did it all mean to them? What are the theories?
Ah, the million-dollar question. And it's incredibly challenging to answer definitively. We have no written records. We're separated by tens of thousands of years. Our interpretations rely on looking at the art itself, where it is in the cave, the archaeology, and sometimes drawing cautious comparisons with more recent hunter-gatherer cultures.
Right, it's educated guesswork to some extent. What was one of the earliest ideas?
An early, quite simple idea was art for art's sake. Basically, they did it because it was beautiful, for aesthetic pleasure, maybe decoration during downtime.
Just making the place look nice.
Kind of. But that theory doesn't really hold up well for places like Altamira. The sheer effort, the location deep in the cave, the power of the images. It suggests something more profound than just decoration. It's largely been discounted now.
Okay, so what else? What about links to their social structure, like totemism?
Totemism was another early theory, influenced by anthropology. The idea is that a group, like a clan, might have a special mystical relationship with a particular animal, their totem. Given how many bison there are in Altamira, you could argue maybe they were a bison clan.
Makes sense on the surface.
But it gets complicated. There are lots of different animals, not just bison. And sometimes animals seem wounded. It doesn't fit perfectly. Though some, like Leroy Gorhan, later suggested maybe individuals had totems, which could explain the variety.
Okay, what about the idea of magic? That seems like a classic explanation for cave art.
Yes, sympathetic magic theories were very influential for a long time, championed by figures like Abbé Breuil. The core idea is that the art was part of rituals to influence the real world.
Like hunting magic. Paint a bison being speared to make the hunt successful.
Exactly, that's the classic example. Or fertility magic. Paint animals mating or pregnant, like that hind in Altamira, to ensure the herds reproduced. Maybe even destruction magic for dangerous animals, though that's less obvious in Altamira.
Does Altamira fit this magic theory well?
Well, there are lots of the animals they hunted, like bison and deer, and the possible fertility scenes. The location deep inside the cave also feels ritualistic. But critics pointed out that there aren't many clear scenes of actual hunting humans interacting with the animals in a hunt. So while magic might have been part of it, it might not be the whole explanation.
Right. Not the full picture. What about more recent ideas like shamanism?
That's gained a lot of traction. Proposed by researchers like Jean Klotz and David Lewis Williams, it suggests these caves were seen as portals to a spirit world. The art could be representations of visions experienced by shamans, maybe in altered states of consciousness.
How does the art support that?
Several things could point that way. The way figures sometimes seem to float. The use of the rock's natural shapes, which might seem to shift or come alive in flickering light. The abstract geometric signs, some think these resemble entoptic phenomena, patterns you see internally during altered states. And the rare human-animal hybrid figures. Plus, the deep, dark, quiet cave environment itself is thought to be conducive to trance states.
That's a powerful image. The cave is a place for spiritual journeys.
It is. Then there's structuralism, a more analytical approach.
How does that work?
Developed mainly by Leroy Gorhan and Lemming Empereur, it proposed that the arrangement of figures in caves wasn't random, but followed a symbolic structure. They argued certain animals were consistently paired, like bison or ox representing a female principle, and horses a male one, with other animals and signs fitting into this system.
So the bison and horses dominating Altamira's ceiling could fit that pattern.
Potentially, yes. Leroy Gorhan certainly thought Altamira fit his scheme. But structuralism has been criticized for being maybe too rigid, trying to fit everything into one fixed pattern.
So again, maybe no single theory fits everything.
It seems likely. Altamira was used for so long the meanings could have shifted. The early abstract signs might have meant something different from the later Magdalenian bison. Maybe it was about transmitting knowledge, marking territory, representing myths, probably a combination. And we shouldn't underestimate the power of just being in the cave, the darkness, the silence. That experience was likely integral to the art's meaning.
A multi-layered purpose, evolving over millennia, makes sense. But this incredible legacy is also incredibly fragile, isn't it? Preservation must be a nightmare.
It's a massive ongoing challenge. Altamira is a delicate underground world, and keeping it stable has been a concern practically since day one. It faces threats both naturally and from us.
What are the natural vulnerabilities?
Well, the cave itself is limestone, which can be dissolved by water over time. There's always a risk of rockfalls. Though, ironically, a big rockfall thousands of years ago actually helped preserve the art by sealing the entrance and stabilizing the climate inside.
Huh. Nature works in mysterious ways.
Doesn't it? But maintaining that stable internal microclimate, temperature, humidity, CO2 levels is absolutely critical now. Water seeping in is a double-edged sword. Needed for humidity, but potentially damaging if it carries pollutants or causes mineral changes.
And what about the human impact? That sounds like the bigger problem in recent times.
It definitely became the major threat in the 20th century. Once the cave was fully open to the public, the sheer number of visitors was overwhelming. We're talking thousands a week at peak times.
Wow. What does that do to a cave environment?
It throws everything off balance. People bring in heat, moisture from breathing, they exhale CO2, stir up dust, bring in microbes. The lights needed for viewing also generated heat. All this caused fluctuations in temperature and humidity, raised CO2 levels, and basically started eating away at the paintings. Even building paths and walls inside, meant to help, altered air and water flow.
A classic case of loving something to death.
Pretty much. Plus, pollution from outside nearby farms, roads could potentially seep in through groundwater.
So what's been done to try and stop the damage?
Well, After Santillana's early efforts, things got serious later. The cave was completely closed in 1977 because the deterioration was so bad.
Drastic.
It had to be. It reopened in 1982, but with very strict limits, only about 8,500 visitors a year after studies and climate controls were put in. Then, more work was done outside, buying up land, moving roads and farms further away.
Did that solve it?
Not entirely. Concerns remained, so it was closed again preventatively in 2002. Then there was a big research project between 2012 and 2014 to really figure out the impact of any human presence.
And the result?
The current system, since 2015, it's incredibly restricted. Only 5 visitors, plus a guide, get chosen by lottery each week to go into the original cave. That's it. Around 260 people a year.
Wow. So hardly anyone gets to see the real thing anymore. How do people experience Altamira now?
That's where the National Museum and Research Center of Altamira comes in. It was set up in 1979, and the modern museum building opened in 2001. Its job is custody, research, conservation, and sharing the knowledge. And crucially, it houses the Neo Cueva.
A replica.
Exactly, the new cave. It's an incredibly precise, high-fidelity replica of the most important parts of the cave, especially that stunning polychrome ceiling.
So people visit the replica instead of the original?
Yes. It's the main way the public can experience Altamira's art now. It lets people get that sense of awe without damaging the fragile original. The museum also has exhibits on Paleolithic life, art techniques, all the context.
It's a pragmatic solution, I guess, but it does raise questions about replicas versus the real thing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a compromise. Is experiencing a perfect replica the same as being in the presence of the millennia-old original? Probably not. But it's the best way found so far to balance preservation with public access and education. Altamira has basically become a test case, a laboratory, for figuring out how to conserve these precious underground sites. The lessons learned there are vital for other caves worldwide.
So, in a way, its near closure makes it even more mythical, this legendary treasure only accessible through the replica or images.
It does add to the mystique, paradoxically. But it forces us to think about how we value and transmit heritage when the original is off limits.
A complex issue. But Altamira's importance goes beyond Spain, right? It's recognized globally.
Definitely. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It got listed individually back in 1985, but then in 2008, the listing was expanded to include 17 other decorated caves across northern Spain. The whole region is recognized as this incredible hub of Paleolithic art.
And why did UNESCO designate it? What makes it World Heritage quality?
2 main criteria were highlighted. First, that these caves, with Altamira leading the way, represent a masterpiece of human creative genius. UNESCO called it the apogee of Paleolithic art, humanity's first fully mastered artistic expression, citing Altamira's technical perfection and expressive power.
Okay, masterpiece status. What else?
Second, that they provide exceptional testimony to a vanished cultural tradition, the Upper Paleolithic hunter-gatherer way of life. They're an extraordinary window into a key stage of human history at the end of the last ice age.
So it's both art history and human history rolled into one. How does Altamira compare to other huge names in cave art, like Lascaux or Chauvet in France?
Good question. They're all giants, but distinct. Lascaux is roughly contemporary with Altamira's main phase, also Magdalenian. Famous for its vibrant colors, huge bowls. Another Sistine Chapel. Like Altamira, it suffered badly from tourism and is now closed, with replicas. Stylistically, though, Lascaux feels different, maybe more dynamic lines, different color emphasis.
And Chauvet, that one's much older, isn't it?
Much older. Chauvet dates back to the Aurignacian, around 36,000 years ago, maybe even earlier. Its discovery in 1994 was revolutionary because the art is so sophisticated for its age. Different animals, too, lions, rhinos, mammoths. It really challenged ideas about art evolving slowly from simple to complex. Chauvet's never been open to the public. It also has a replica.
So comparing them shows it wasn't a straight line of development.
Exactly. Chauvet proves incredible mastery existed very early on. It suggests maybe different artistic traditions coexisted rather than one single path. And then you have great Spanish sites like Tito Bustillo, part of the same UNESCO group as Altamira, with its own long history and distinct features, like those similar small horses.
And we shouldn't forget sites outside Europe either.
Absolutely crucial. Discoveries like the painted stone plaques from Apollo 11 cave in Namibia dating back over 25,000 years show sophisticated art was happening in Africa too. It really challenges the old Eurocentric view of where art began and reminds us that this creative impulse is fundamentally human and likely had multiple origins.
So UNESCO status helps protect these places, but also fosters this bigger global understanding.
Yes, it promotes international cooperation, research, conservation awareness, but it also brings responsibilities and potential tourism pressure, which is why careful management and things like replicas are so important.
This journey through Altamira has been fascinating. It's so much more than just pictures on a wall. It feels like a direct connection to people from an unimaginably distant past.
It truly is. Altamira remains this peak of prehistoric creativity, an invaluable insight into how Paleolithic people lived, thought, believed. Its discovery fundamentally changed our view of human history. And it's still teaching us, still sparking debate about art origins, human cognition, ancient spirituality.
And the struggle to preserve it teaches us about our own responsibilities towards heritage, doesn't it? That constant balancing act.
For sure. And its influence goes way beyond archaeology. It's in popular culture. It's a symbol for the region of Cantabria. It inspires artists today. That enduring power is part of its legacy.
You know, the story of Altamira itself, the discovery, the skepticism, the scientific detective work, the conservation battles, it almost mirrors the journey of archaeology as a field.
That's a great point. From early collecting to this complex, high-tech, conservation-focused discipline, Altamira reflects that whole evolution.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Why does this ancient art, created tens of thousands of years ago in the dark, still resonate so powerfully today? What does it tell us about the enduring human need to create meaning and beauty? And what other hidden stories from our deep past might still be out there waiting to change how we see ourselves?
A lot to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.